Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Mike Zuber, one rental at a time, back with my good friend, Mr. Greg Dickerson. How you doing, sir?
Doing great, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well. So I'm going to ask you a question that honestly, I didn't think I would ask anybody ever, but we're going to ask you because you're just that guy. So you ready?
I'm ready.
So I want to know, do you think that the King dollar could lose the reserve currency of the world in the next decade or the next 2 decades, right? I'm going to give you a big time horizon, right? So let's say, do you think the dollar could lose the reserve currency of the world in the next 10 to 20 years?
No, not in 20 years. I mean, anything is possible long term, but in the next
Sure.
10 to 20 years, no, it's not possible.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk about it happening. I think there's not a, at least in the next 20 years. I totally agree. I do not see another currency of size or of strength that could threaten it. Right? I mean, just during my lifetime of watching the markets, there's been talk of the euro. I don't know, 20, 30 years ago. There was talk of the yen. There was talk of China's currency, the yuan, I believe it is. Now there's talk of crypto or digital currency, all of these things. There's a talk of going back to the gold standard. I just don't see one that's big enough or strong enough or has the rule of law that people can put their full faith behind.
Yeah, that's the key right there, is the stability, regardless of what you think, but the stability of the United States government and economy. But really, more than anything else, and we used an analogy in the last episode of the economy, the inflation, and what's going on in the risk taking right now, is that if I gave you $100 million to invest in real estate, non-recourse, 0% interest,
Yeah.
if everything you bought blew up, you'd never have to pay it back, and there would be zero consequences to you. What would you do? You'd go spend, spend, spend.
Yeah.
Now, how about this? How about if I need $100 million and you knew that I could print the interest payment on that $100 million, you'll loan it to me at 2% interest, and I can print those dollars back to you that are still good and valuable. How much money would you loan me? If you knew that I had an unlimited ability to service that debt.
Yeah.
So, that's the thing. We create our own currency that isn't tied to any type of a gold or anything like that. So it's unlimited in the amount that we can create. And we have a GDP to back it up. And when you lever up our GDP of $30 trillion, realistically, we can borrow $100 trillion and we're okay.
Yeah.
From a normal leverage standpoint, you leverage it up tenfold, we can borrow 300 trillion. You lever it up, exponentially from there, which you could argue that we're already levered up. But, at the end of the day, as long as we can keep printing without consequence, which is what we've been doing since, my entire career, that I've been paying attention to the economy. What woke me up was 2008 and 9. I didn't really pay a lot of attention other than interest rates, but 2008 and 9, when that happened, I started digging in. I was
like, whoa.
Well, I was like, how could that happen?
Yeah, that's different.
And we've been on the printing press since then, and we've had zero negative consequences. They've only been positive. We've had the longest bull market in the history of the world in all assets. I mean, real estate's been straight up pretty much since then. And we had a little correction after that, 2011, or not 11, but 2019, when interest rates started ticking up a little bit and the Fed started tapering. There's been a couple little where they tried to get out of the markets.
Yeah.
But we really haven't seen super hyperinflation like you think we would have at the consumer level from all of this stimulus. We've seen it in the assets, and that's the result of the, the bull markets that we've been in. But as long as the Fed keeps it up, that can keep growing. We can keep going, and nothing is really going to affect that. But at the end of the day, it's the faith in the value of that dollar, backed by the United States. You can't trust China. You can't trust, any of these other countries. We're the only ones that you can truly trust from a financial standpoint in terms of the value of the dollar and our ability to, continue to service it.
Yeah, I think that's where it goes down. And again, we have fits and starts where, we're strong. We're there's a lot of stuff going on in the world today that people are pointing at, see, foreign governments are losing faith in the United States. Yes, there have been some events here that I guess all of us wish didn't happen, or at least I hope most of us wish didn't happen, that are causing people to ask questions. It's causing countries to make partnerships with other countries, right? I believe there was an agreement between Russia and Saudi Arabia around oil, that people are calling the death of the dollar, or the petrodollar specifically. I think these are just countries, creating plan Bs and creating other relationships. And again, they have to do what's right for them. And you know, having only dollars, that's that's risky, right? They're doing the right things from portfolio management, frankly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so from the standpoint of reserve currencies, world reserve currencies, the dollar is the world's reserve currency. Governments around the world own more dollars than any other asset.
Yeah.
They're starting to stock up a little bit more on gold, but they still have more dollars than anything else. Some countries will offload, but at the end of the day, the countries and the economies around the world that matter, they're in the dollar, and the dollar is the de facto reserve currency. And you can take the dollar anywhere in the world and use it.
Yeah. So I've been studying this for quite a while, right? Because the death of the dollar has been a topic for the last 2 decades easily, right? That's what people think, like the death of the dollar is the new idea. They've been around since Japan was kicking our butt with manufacturing. But the one area that I thought had a chance to dethrone King Dollar, there was talk right when the euro was coming out about creating a basket of currencies, right? You'd have, 1/3 euro, you'd have, 20% yen. And I'm just making up these numbers because I don't remember what they were. And you'd have a little bit of China, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And yes, a little bit of dollar. I was like, that could be interesting, right? Whatever this basket becomes, call it blue. I don't care. Call it whatever you want. But what happened is that was kind of taking fold. What do you think happened? Countries didn't agree. My currency is worth more than your currency and this and that. I mean, what you really realize is once you try to put together a basket with, 5, 10, 20 currencies, they don't agree. And if you can't get agreement on the, weighted portfolio, that idea just blows up.
Which is how the dollar is measured, by the way. So the dollar is measured against a basket of other currencies, the major currencies, and that's where the value of the dollar globally comes up from. But at the end of the day, you just can't trust anybody else anywhere else in the world like you can trust the United States. And regardless of what people's beliefs are, and I know there's a lot going on right now with Afghanistan and things, but at the end of the day, from a financial standpoint, I mean, look what China's done. They just come in and shut you down and take your property. So will other countries.
Exactly.
And, we're the only country in the history of the world that doesn't try to go invade others and take them over. Yeah. We're the ones that come to the defense of others and try to help them. We're not trying to claim more. We came to this country to get away from that. Yeah. And, other countries still have world domination as a philosophy, where we have world's best interest overall as a philosophy. Now, obviously there's, sides to that whole thing, but that's the idea. Yeah. Of this country is the reliability and the strength of the United States and the dollar system. You're just not going to replace that.
Yeah, the one area I wanted to go to, because you cover this a lot more than I do, I frankly never talk about it, is Bitcoin, right? I think it was El Salvador that went first. It called it a legal current, or a current, I don't know what they call it. I think it's
legal
tender. Cuba just did the same thing.
Well, not yet. They're talking about it and they're voting on it. There's other countries that, and they're not even talking about Cuba. I haven't read it, but I don't think they're talking about legal tender, but they're talking about as an authorized or recognized, form of payment currency.
Thank you for the correction. Again, I never look at these. I was a headline. But the one area that is interesting again, I'll just generalize them as digital currencies. Do you think, because again, there are some folks that say this is like the future, limited supply, it's, Ethereum is the internet of money in the future. And then we have a guy named John Paulson, who's a billionaire. And oh, by the way, yes, he's old, right? Because I think he's a baby boomer. All right. So he's old. I get it. But he's saying crypto's going to zero. I guess either extreme is possible, but where do you come down in that kind of world?
You said crypto's going to zero and you froze.
Oh no!
The internet got you.
The internet got me. That's right. Those little darn things.
So, a lot of people lump everything into the same basket. So to address what El Salvador is doing and other countries like that, number one, they're a dictatorship. They're corrupt. It's a corrupt government. And, there are self-interests involved in that move. And at the end of the day, their own people can't use it, don't want to use it. It's too expensive. It's inefficient. It's not so Bitcoin was created as a peer-to-peer cross-border, no third party, transaction, money for transaction. That's what it was originally created for. And, what it's proven is it doesn't work efficiently and effectively as a money. It's a speculative asset. It's not even a store of value because it's so volatile. Now its life cycle has been straight up, with the peaks and valleys, and started at a penny and it's gone up to, at its peak 65,000. It's, pulled back a little bit, so it's up and down. Nobody knows or can guarantee what's the future value of this asset because there are other things out there, but the properties of Bitcoin in and of itself. So it's the easiest way to understand it at its core essence, not what it is or what it was created for, but how it works. It's like a pyramid, not a Ponzi, but a pyramid. It's only as valuable as people willing to enter the space and pay more for it. That's how a pyramid works. You create this thing, you say, hey, go invite 4 or 5 of your friends and they'll buy in. Each one of those go invite 4 or 5 or 10 of their friends. So it's a network effect. It's a social effect, but in essence, it's a pyramid because there is nothing. You're not getting any value, any service. It's not really used for utility in any way other than the speculative, speculative value of the asset. Now, that's Bitcoin. And, there are a group of people that are Bitcoin maximalists. I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. I understand it from a value standpoint, from speculation, because I've speculated my entire career with real estate, businesses, things like that. I still do. So I get that. And understand that. There's a paper out there that you can read about Bitcoin, what it was intended for, the Bitcoin white paper. And then there's a book called The Bitcoin Standard, which is kind of an analogy of the gold standard versus Bitcoin standard, and the argument for Bitcoin as world's reserve currency. But it just doesn't work, and it can't work because of the limited supply. You can't tie fiat currencies to something that limits the supply of it. It just doesn't work. Cryptocurrencies are different. Ethereum, yes, that's one of several projects out there that are internet of cryptos where things are built on top of it. Gaming, for instance, NFTs, things like that. Whereas that's a different type of network than Bitcoin, and blockchain in and of itself is a ledger, open ledger. To record transactions, basically spreadsheets. That are out there that are supposedly, open source networks, which now, Jack Dorsey at Twitter is trying to create. Yeah. So that's another aspect. Then you have DeFi, decentralized finance, which is peer-to-peer lending, peer-to-peer, exchange, things like that. There is a movement there to eliminate banks, eliminate third parties like credit card companies, things like that. So that's originally what Bitcoin was really created to do, was to eliminate third-party intermediaries between you and me trying to send money all around the world, right? And be able to use that and exchange value all around the world. It doesn't work, and it won't work because it's just inefficient, Bitcoin. So these other things are being created to solve that problem. So that's where the Ethereum network, some of these currencies can be built on top of that could potentially be used around the world, like a USDC or DT, the stable coins that are created, and eventually all of the countries of the world will have digital currency. But again, people have to have a means to be able to use that and exchange it amongst each other. So it's a little more complicated. Then within the space of cryptocurrencies, between DeFi, the currencies themselves like a Bitcoin, then you have the NFT space, where digital art, digital music is able to be digitized and sold, where you can own the rights to a song and nobody else can own it. They can copy it, they can whatever, but you're the one that owns the original. So you've got, that space that's really taken off, highly speculative, huge bubble, where a digital JPEG of a rock's being sold for millions of dollars. Crazy. But you got to understand how that works. You could create your own NFT, buy it from yourself because nobody knows who you are. It's an anonymous chain transaction. You could buy it for whatever. Now you've created value in a speculative bubble. So a lot of that's being done that way. A lot of it's being used for money laundering. Again, if you need to launder $100 million, you create some NFTs, you sell them, to that address for whatever you need to launder the money. So there's a lot of, speculative bubble asset there, but there's real use cases for NFTs, and gaming is your biggest area where a lot of cryptocurrencies are built around gaming. And, there's a lot of use cases there. And then you have the metaverse that Facebook is really all about, where they're trying to create this virtual world where you're not just looking at a screen of virtual reality. You actually put on the goggles and you step into it, like Ready Player One, the movie. Oh, yeah. And you're in this universe and you can buy goods and services in there. Those are NFTs, non-frangible tokens. And in this universe, you own these assets. Could be property, could be anything, could be the car you're driving in the metaverse, you're actually paying real money for that. And, gaming was the first segue into that, over the years. So there's a lot of different things that are lumped into the word cryptocurrency. So could Bitcoin go to zero someday? Sure, absolutely. Anything's possible. Could it go to $1 million too? Sure. Anything's possible. Can it go to 100 million like Fidelity just came out and said? Then, that's a stretch, I think, but hey,
a single coin, 100 million.
That's what they're saying, and anybody can make a 50-year, 100-year horizon, projection. So that's really what's going on in the space of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and things like that. And, that's why there's so much confusion. So when somebody like Paulson comes out and says cryptocurrency is going to zero, yeah, sure. There's a lot of fake coins, a lot of fake projects and meme coins, just like stocks, that will go to zero and end up. And there's a lot of,
no question,
stuff that's created that get people in because it is speculative. It's venture capital. Anybody can create one. Anybody can just say, you can say, hey, I've got this project where, I want to be able to do smart contracts and serve the NFT space. Total scam. You go out there, you create this thing, issue tokens, people buy in, you take all the money and walk away and never do anything.
Yeah. Rug pull. Yeah. Yeah. So again, this question was, could the king dollar be dead in 20 years? And by dead, meaning it's no longer the reserve currency of the world. I don't know. It's been talked about for the last 30 years and hasn't happened. I don't see it in the next 20 years, and you don't either.
Yeah, anything is possible, but at this point in time, you'd have to replace it with something that can be trusted worldwide that everybody would use. So is that possible? Sure. A Bitcoin-like instrument
maybe
could be the solution.
Could be.
But at the end of the day, who's going to back that up? The public at large, which was the whole idea behind Bitcoin, is that you have trust in the network that backs up the value of it. So, but it can't be limited. That's the thing, so it's very complicated. I
just don't, I think there's the big trust factor. And again, the other thing that I've always thought about is just the size. Back when the whole thought was the yen's going to become the number one currency and all, I'm like, do you guys understand the scale? Like how many yen there are to how many, this was in the 80s. Like that mathematically doesn't work. I get the fact that they're kicking butt with manufacturing and just-in-time inventory and all of that, and then they go out and buy, Pebble Beach. I think they bought the Pebble Beach golf course for a record at the time and lost their ass because again, it's I don't know, just a bubble. So yeah, I don't see the dollar going away. I think the most likely thing is a crypto or digital currency like thing. But again, I go back to that basket of goods, right? There was a time where the basket of currencies felt like, hey, you know what? If the 8 largest or 10 largest countries got together and said, hey, we're going to put together, this is the ratio, let's kill the dollar, that could have worked. But once you get together with 8 countries with 8 leaders and 8, populations, it just blows up. So, it's
really interesting. And then the whole conversation in the crypto space is all about decentralization. It's all about open source, open network, where people collaborate. And that's how Bitcoin is done. There's miners all around the world that run machines that maintain the network and record and, maintain these transactions, and they get rewarded with blocks, of Bitcoin. And so there's a council now that they all talk about things. So even that's not truly decentralized. Sure, there's different operators, but they still have to have a council. They still have to agree on updates and if they get hacked and all these different things. So there really is no way to truly decentralize something, especially when you're dealing with a currency, or even stores of values. A network has to be maintained. And, if you're in a situation where everybody has to vote and everybody has a say, well, that's not, that's the idea of decentralization, but still at the end of the day, you're going to have some centralization of a network to keep it going and keep it alive.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So Greg, how can people find you?
Yeah, gregdickerson.com. I got a YouTube channel, podcast. I talk about all these things, real estate, finance,
every
markets,
day,
cryptos every day. I'm putting content out.
Very cool, man. Thank you very much.